Sam liked peace and quiet more than anything else. That was why he bought the small cabin at the edge of the woods 5 years ago. It was not fancy, but it was his. He enjoyed the sound of the wind moving through the trees, the calls of the birds in the morning, and the smell of pine after rain. For Sam, the cabin was not just a house. It was a safe place where he could rest, work on his little projects, and live without anyone watching over his shoulder. The cabin was inside a neighborhood managed by a homeowners association, better known as the HOA. At first, Sam did not think much about it. The papers were signed quickly, and he was just happy to have his own place. Over time, though, he learned that the HOA liked to act as if it owned more than it really did. It set rules about how tall the grass should be, what color paint could be used, and even how long someone could park a car in front of their home. Sam found most of these rules annoying but harmless. He kept his grass trimmed, his cabin painted in a simple shade, and his car parked near the shed. He did his best not to stir trouble. Still, the HOA often found reasons to send letters. One week it was about the firewood stacked too close to the porch. Another week it was about the small wooden sign Sam had placed by the gate, carved with his own hands, which said "Welcome." The HOA said it did not match the uniform look of the community. Sam laughed when he read that, but deep inside, he was tired of their interference. One summer morning, Sam noticed something unusual. A car he did not recognize was parked near the gravel road outside his gate. A man in a suit was standing there with a clipboard, looking at the cabin through the trees. Sam stepped outside, curious but cautious. "Can I help you with something?" Sam asked, his voice calm but firm. The man smiled politely. "Good morning. I'm a realtor. I was invited by the homeowners association to take a look at the property. They mentioned it may be going up for sale." Sam stared at him, confused. "For sale? This is my cabin. It is not for sale." The realtor looked surprised but checked his notes. "The HOA representative told me they were preparing listings for several homes in the area, including this one. I was told to tour the cabin today." Sam felt his chest tighten. He had never given permission for anyone to sell his home. He had not even spoken to the HOA in weeks. "You were misinformed," Sam said sharply. "This place is not for sale. Not now, not ever, unless I say so." The realtor raised his hands in apology. "I'm sorry, sir. I don't mean any trouble. I was just following instructions. If this was a mistake, I'll head back." Sam watched as the man walked to his car and drove away. The sound of tires on gravel faded, leaving Sam with the uneasy silence of the woods. He stood at the gate, thinking about what had just happened. How could the HOA invite a realtor without even asking him? What gave them the right? That night, Sam sat at his wooden table with a cup of tea. He thought long and hard. If the HOA was bold enough to tell a realtor his cabin was for sale, then this was no simple mistake. It was a plan. Maybe they wanted his cabin because it was near the woods and had more land than the others. Maybe they thought they could push him out. Sam decided he could not stay quiet anymore. The next morning, he walked down to the gate with a heavy chain and a solid lock. He wrapped the chain around the iron bars of the gate and snapped the lock shut. Then he took out a piece of wood he had painted the night before. On it, in bold black letters, were the words, "Private property. Not for sale. Keep out." He nailed the sign to the gate where no one could miss it. Standing back, Sam looked at it with a sense of pride. The cabin was his, and he was not going to let anyone pretend otherwise. Later that afternoon, a neighbor named Paul stopped by. He leaned over the fence and looked at the sign. "Sam, what's all this about? Look serious." Sam explained what had happened with the realtor. Paul whistled softly. "That's strange. The HOA has been talking about new plans for the community. Maybe they want more control over the land around here. But to invite someone to sell your place without asking you, that's crossing a line. Sam nodded. Exactly. That's why I locked the gate. If they think they can push me out, they're wrong. Paul gave him a firm nod of support. Good for you, Sam. Don't let them get away with it. This place is yours. As the sun set behind the trees, Sam sat on the porch of his cabin and watched the orange glow fade into twilight. He knew the fight was just beginning. The HOA would not like his sign or his locked gate, but he was ready. The cabin was his home, and he would stand his ground. The next morning, Sam woke early. The woods were still quiet, with a soft mist lying low over the ground. He stood by his porch, sipping his coffee, and kept glancing toward the gate where his new sign hung. He wondered how long it would take before the HOA noticed. He did not have to wait long. By mid-morning, a silver car pulled up near the road. Out stepped Clara, the president of the HOA. She was dressed neatly, with a folder tucked under her arm. Her sharp eyes locked on the sign as she walked toward the gate. Sam, she called, her voice polite but firm. We need to talk about this. Sam set down his mug and walked over. Morning, Clara. What seems to be the problem? Clara pointed to the sign. This. It's not allowed. HOA rules say that no private signs can be placed without approval. Sam crossed his arms. This is my property. The sign says the truth. My cabin is not for sale. And it never was. Clara pressed her lips together. The Realtor was here on official business. We've been working on a development plan for this area. It will improve property values and bring more attention to the community. Your cabin is part of that plan. Sam frowned. I never agreed to any plan. Nobody asked me if I wanted to sell my cabin. Clara's tone grew sharper. Sam, the HOA has the authority to make decisions that affect the community as a whole. We can't allow one person to block progress. If you cooperate, this will go smoothly. Sam shook his head. You don't have the authority to sell what you don't own. This cabin belongs to me, not the HOA. You can't just decide for me. For a moment, Clara's confident look faded. She adjusted her folder and cleared her throat. I'll take this up with the board. But I suggest you remove that sign before we have to issue a violation notice. Sam smiled faintly, but his eyes stayed steady. You can issue all the notices you want. That sign stays right where it is. Clara turned on her heel and walked back to her car, her shoes clicking against the gravel. Sam watched her leave, his jaw tight. He knew this was only the start of a bigger battle. That afternoon, Sam decided to prepare. He went through his old documents, pulling out the deed to his cabin. He carefully placed it in a folder along with letters he had received from the HOA over the years. He wanted to be ready for whatever they tried next. Later, his neighbor Paul came by again. He had heard Clara's car earlier and guessed there had been a confrontation. She looked upset when she drove past my place, Paul said with a chuckle. What happened? Sam told him about the conversation. Paul shook his head. They've been talking for months about expanding. They want new houses, bigger lots, maybe even some commercial buildings. But your cabin is right on the edge of where they want to build. They probably think you're the weak link. Sam gave a small smile. Then they picked the wrong person. The two men shared a laugh, but the mood quickly turned serious again. Paul leaned closer. Be careful, Sam. The HOA can be stubborn. They like to play with rules and pressure people until they give up. Sam nodded. I know. But this cabin means too much to me. I won't give it up just because they want more money. As the days passed, the tension grew. Sam received an official letter from the HOA, warning him that his sign violated community rules and had to be taken down within 10 days. He read the letter twice, then set it aside. Instead of removing the sign, he made another one. This one read, "No trespassing. Owner does not consent to sale." He placed it beside the first, making sure the message was even clearer. A few days later, Sam heard another car outside. This time it was not a realtor but two members of the HOA board. They stood at the gate, reading the signs, then called out for Sam. He walked over, calm but alert. One of them, a tall man named Brian, spoke first. "Sam, we're here to resolve this matter peacefully. We understand you don't want to sell, but the HOA believes the plan is for the greater good." Sam raised an eyebrow. "And what about my good? My home? My land? Do those not matter?" Brian tried to sound reasonable. "Of course they matter, but you have to think of the community. Everyone will benefit from the new development. You'll get a good price if you agree." Sam's answer was simple. "I'm not selling. Not for any price." The two board members exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, the second one, a woman named Ruth, spoke softly. "You know they won't stop, right? Clara won't take no easily." Sam gave a slow nod. "Then I'll be ready. This is my fight now." That night, Sam sat on his porch with the cool breeze brushing his face. The forest around him was calm, but his mind was sharp and alert. He knew the HOA would not give up. But neither would he. He was not just protecting a cabin. He was protecting his right to decide his own future. The stars came out one by one, and Sam leaned back in his chair. Whatever came next, he would face it head on. The gate was locked, the signs were posted, and his spirit was firm. The battle for the cabin had only just begun. A week passed, and the pressure from the HOA only grew stronger. Letters kept arriving in Sam's mailbox. Each one carried the same message written in different words. They demanded he remove the signs, unlock the gate, and cooperate with the development plan. Each time, Sam read the letters calmly, then placed them in a growing stack on his table. He had no plan to obey them. On a warm Friday morning, another car arrived outside the gate. This time it was not just Clara or board members. 3 people from the HOA stood there, along with a man in a business suit who carried a leather briefcase. Sam could tell from the way he carried himself that he was a lawyer. Clara called out, her voice loud and clear. "Sam, this is getting out of hand. You are refusing to follow the rules of the community." We had no choice but to bring legal advice. Sam stepped to the gate and looked at them calmly. "This is my land. I've said it before. My cabin is not for sale." The lawyer cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Sam, my name is Richard. I represent the HOA. We are prepared to move forward with legal action if you continue to resist. You are in violation of multiple community rules." Sam kept his voice steady. "You can't take away what you don't own. The cabin is mine. I pay my dues, I pay my taxes, and I live here in peace. You don't get to sell my home." Clara's patience seemed to wear thin. "You don't understand, Sam. This development will bring in new homes, new businesses, and more value for everyone. If you stand in the way, you'll drag the whole community down. Why make things hard for yourself?" Sam leaned on the gate, his eyes firm. "Because it's right. You can't bully people into giving up their homes. You might scare others, but not me." The lawyer looked uncomfortable. He closed his briefcase slowly. "Perhaps we should schedule a formal meeting," he said. Clara gave him a sharp look, but he only shook his head. Pushing too hard could backfire. After a tense silence, the group left. Their cars disappeared down the gravel road, leaving Sam once again in the quiet of the woods. He stood there, thinking. He knew the HOA had money, power, and connections. But he had something stronger, the truth. That evening, Paul stopped by again. He had seen the group earlier and was worried. Sam, they're not going to quit. You know that, right? They've got their eyes on this land. You need a plan. Sam nodded slowly. I do have a plan. First, I keep my gate locked. Second, I keep proof of everything they try. Every letter, every word, every visit. If they want to fight, I'll show the truth. Paul gave him a look of respect. You've got a strong spirit, Sam. But don't forget, you're not alone. Some of us neighbors don't like what the HOA is doing either. We may need to stand together. That thought gave Sam comfort. Maybe he was not the only one tired of the HOA's games. Maybe this fight was bigger than just his cabin. The next day, Sam drove into town. He went to the county office and asked for copies of property records. He wanted to make sure nothing had been changed without his knowledge. The clerk, an older man with glasses, pulled up the records and handed them over. Looks fine, the clerk said. Your name is still on the deed. No liens, no sales filed. Everything is legal. Sam thanked him and drove back with a lighter heart. At least for now, the HOA had not managed to twist the law in their favor. When he returned, he saw something new at the edge of his gate. A bright orange paper was pinned to the post. It was another violation notice, but this one was bigger, with bold letters at the top, final warning, remove unauthorized signs or face penalty. Sam tore it down and added it to his stack of letters. Then he smiled to himself. Instead of giving in, he made a third sign that night. It read, "This land is under legal protection. Any false claim of sale will be challenged." He placed it beside the other two, making his message louder than ever. That evening, as the sun went down, Sam sat on the porch again. He could hear crickets chirping in the tall grass. The woods seemed calm, but his mind was full of thoughts. He knew the HOA would not stop with letters or warnings. Sooner or later, they would try something bigger. Sam was ready for that. He had his proof, his documents, his signs, and his will. The cabin was more than wood and stone. It was his freedom, and he would not surrender it. As the stars appeared, Paul came walking over with a lantern. "Mind if I sit with you for a while?" he asked. "Of course," Sam said with a smile. They sat together, two friends under the night sky, talking quietly. Paul shared stories of his own struggles with the HOA, little things that had built up over time. Sam listened carefully. By the end of the night, both men knew the truth. This was no longer just about one cabin. It was about standing up to a group that thought it could control everything. Sam leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the glowing stars. "They think I'll give up," he said softly. "But they don't know me. I'm not leaving." And with that, the night grew quiet again, holding the promise of battle still to come. Days turned into weeks, and the standoff between Sam and the HOA became the talk of the neighborhood. People whispered about it at the grocery store, at the local cafe, and even while walking their dogs along the gravel paths. Some thought Sam was stubborn, while others quietly admired his courage. For Sam, it didn't matter what anyone said. What mattered was keeping his cabin safe. One morning, Sam heard a knock at his door. When he opened it, he found a young woman standing there with a notebook in her hand. She introduced herself as Anna, a local reporter. "Mr. Sam, I've heard about the situation with your homeowners association. Would you mind if I ask you some questions?" she said politely. Sam hesitated. He was not fond of attention, but he realized this might be an opportunity. If people learned the truth, the HOA would not be able to twist the story. "All right," he said. "Come in." Anna sat at his table as Sam poured her some tea. She asked about the cabin, about how long he had lived there, and about the strange visit from the Realtor. Sam explained everything carefully, showing her the stack of letters and the signs he had posted. When she closed her notebook, her eyes were serious. This isn't the first time I've heard complaints about this HOA. They've been accused of overstepping before. People will want to hear your side. Sam gave a small nod. Tell them the truth. That's all I ask. 2 days later, the story appeared in the local newspaper under the headline, "Cabin Owner Says HOA Tried to Sell His Property Without Consent." The article spread quickly. Neighbors came by to say they had read it. Some offered quiet support, others warned him that the HOA would be angry. Sam knew both were true. The reaction from the HOA came faster than expected. Clara and the board called for a community meeting at the clubhouse. Flyers were slipped under doors, and announcements were posted on bulletin boards. The message was clear: attendance was mandatory. On the evening of the meeting, Sam arrived early. Paul came with him for support. The clubhouse was a plain brick building, but inside, the air was tense. Rows of chairs were filled with neighbors, their faces curious and uneasy. At the front, Clara stood with the other board members, her folder stacked with papers. When everyone had settled, Clara began. "We are here to discuss the disruption caused by Mr. Sam's actions. His signs, his refusal to cooperate, and his misleading statements to the press have damaged the image of our community." Murmurs rose among the crowd. Some nodded, others frowned. Sam stood slowly. His voice was calm but firm. "I spoke the truth. The HOA invited a realtor to tour my cabin as if it were for sale. But it was not for sale. It has never been for sale. My signs are not misleading. They are clear." Clara's face tightened. "You are twisting the facts. The realtor visit was part of a routine survey for development purposes. You've exaggerated it to make the HOA look dishonest." Sam lifted the folder he had brought. "I have proof. Here are the letters, the notices, the warnings. All of them push me to remove my signs and give in to a plan I never agreed to. And the deed still has my name on it. No matter what the HOA claims, the cabin belongs to me." He placed the documents on the table for everyone to see. The neighbors leaned forward, whispering. Some looked surprised, others looked troubled. Paul spoke up from the crowd. "Sam is not the only one tired of these rules. For years we've been told what we can and cannot do, even inside our own homes. Maybe it's time we questioned how much power the HOA should have." A ripple went through the room. People exchanged glances. Clara's expression darkened. "This meeting is not about questioning the HOA itself," she snapped. "It's about one man breaking rules and stirring trouble." But Anna, the reporter, was there too. She raised her hand. "With respect, this seems bigger than one man. If homeowners are saying their rights are being ignored, that's something the public deserves to know." Clara's voice faltered, but she quickly regained control. "The HOA is within its rights to enforce community standards. Mr. Sam is simply refusing to comply." Sam spoke again, his voice steady and clear. "There's a difference between standards and control. I take care of my cabin. I follow the basic rules. But you don't own my home. You don't get to sell it. That's where I draw the line." For a moment, the room was silent. Then a neighbor named Helen, who had lived there even longer than Sam, stood up. "He's right. The HOA has gone too far. We joined this community to live in peace, not to be pushed around." More voices joined in. Some spoke carefully, others with passion. It became clear that not everyone supported Clara's vision of progress. The meeting, meant to silence Sam, had instead given people the courage to speak. By the end of the night, Clara ended the meeting early, her face pale with anger. The board members gathered their papers and left quickly. The neighbors stayed behind, talking in small groups. Many came to Sam, patting his shoulder and thanking him for standing up. When Sam walked back to his cabin with Paul, the night air felt lighter. The stars above shone brightly, and the wood seemed alive with quiet strength. Paul clapped him on the back. You did good tonight. You made them listen. Sam gave a small smile. This isn't over. But now they know I'm not alone. The cabin lights glowed warmly as he stepped inside. For the first time in weeks, Sam felt not just defiant, but hopeful. The HOA might still come after him, but he had neighbors willing to stand by his side. And that changed everything. The days following the meeting were filled with a new kind of energy in the community. Neighbors began visiting each other more often, speaking in low voices about what had happened. Many felt braver after hearing Sam speak out. They realized that if one man could stand up to the HOA, maybe they could too. Sam noticed the change as well. People who had once stayed quiet now waved to him when they passed by. Some stopped at his gate to thank him. You said what we were all thinking, one neighbor told him. Another whispered, Clara's been pushing us for too long. We're glad you stood your ground. But the support also brought more pressure. The HOA did not like losing control, and Clara made sure everyone knew it. New letters came, each one written with sharper words than the last. The fines they threatened grew larger, and the warnings grew bolder. Sam added each letter to his growing stack, keeping it all in order. Paul came by often to check on him. One evening, they sat together on the porch while the sun dipped below the trees. Paul looked serious. I think they're planning something bigger, Sam. I heard from a friend that Clara called for a private meeting with the board and that lawyer. Whatever they're planning, it won't be small. Sam leaned back in his chair. Then I'll be ready. They can't take what isn't theirs. As long as I have the deed, this cabin is safe. Paul gave a slow nod. You're right. But I don't want to see you fight alone. If they come after you, a lot of us will stand beside you. That thought gave Sam strength. Still, he knew the HOA had power, money, and connections that ordinary neighbors did not. He decided to prepare in his own way too. The next morning, Sam drove to the courthouse in town. He met with a property attorney, a calm man named Harris who listened carefully as Sam explained everything. Harris looked through the stack of letters and shook his head. They've overstepped, Harris said. They have no legal right to claim your property. They can send all the violation notices they want, but none of this gives them power to sell your cabin. If they push further, you'll have a strong case against them. Sam felt a weight lift from his chest. So they can't take it? Not legally, Harris said. But they might try to pressure you until you give in. If that happens, you call me. I'll make sure your rights are defended. Sam thanked him and left the courthouse with a new sense of confidence. He drove back to the cabin with the sun shining on his windshield, feeling ready for whatever came next. When he returned, though, he found something waiting at the gate. Another notice, this one even larger than before, was posted on the fence. It read, Mandatory board hearing. Attendance required. Sam tore it down and placed it with the others. He knew what it meant. The HOA wanted to drag him in front of the board and pressure him in front of everyone. The hearing was scheduled for Saturday morning in the clubhouse. Word spread quickly, and by the time Sam arrived, the room was already full. Neighbors sat in the rows of chairs, whispering to each other. Clara stood at the front with the lawyer by her side, her posture straight and her face stern. When Sam entered, the room grew quiet. He walked calmly to the front and faced the board. Clara spoke first. Mr. Sam, you are here because of repeated violations. You have ignored community rules, posted unauthorized signs, and damaged the reputation of this neighborhood. Sam's voice was calm but steady. I'm here because you tried to sell my cabin without my consent. Everything I've done since then has been to protect my home. Clara's eyes narrowed. That is not true. We never claimed your property was for sale. The Realtor visit was for evaluation purposes only. At that moment, Anna the reporter stood up from the back row. That's not what the realtor told Sam. He said he was invited to tour the cabin because it was being prepared for sale. I spoke to him myself. I wrote it in my article. The room buzzed with whispers. Clara's face tightened, but she pressed on. Even so, the signs and the locked gate are violations of the rules. You must remove them. Sam placed the folder of documents on the table again. These letters show every warning, every demand, every threat. None of them change the fact that the deed is in my name. None of them change the fact that you tried to push me out. The cabin belongs to me, and no rule gives you the right to sell it. Paul stood up in the crowd. He's telling the truth. We've all seen how the HOA pushes people around. This isn't about rules. It's about control. Other neighbors began nodding. Some even spoke out, sharing their own frustrations. One woman said she had been fined for leaving her garden tools outside. Another man said he was forced to repaint his fence twice in 1 year. The complaints grew louder until the room was filled with voices. Clara slammed her hand on the table. Enough. This meeting is not about anyone else. It's about Sam and his violations. But the crowd had changed. The neighbors were no longer quiet. They had seen the truth, and they were not afraid to speak. The hearing that was supposed to shame Sam had turned into a storm against the board. By the time the meeting ended, Clara looked shaken. She gathered her papers quickly, avoiding eye contact with anyone. The lawyer followed her out, his face pale. Sam left the clubhouse surrounded by neighbors who patted his shoulder and thanked him. He could see it in their eyes. This was no longer just his fight. It was theirs too. As he walked back to his cabin, Paul walked beside him. You didn't just defend your home today, Sam. You gave people a voice. That's more powerful than anything Clara has. Sam looked at his cabin through the trees, the warm light glowing in the windows. His heart felt steady. The fight was far from over, but he was no longer standing alone. The following week, the atmosphere around Sam's cabin changed. The tension with the HOA remained, but there was also a sense of quiet support from the neighbors. People nodded to him on the road and waved from their porches. Some came by to leave small gifts, flowers, fresh vegetables, or homemade bread just to show solidarity. It gave Sam a feeling he hadn't realized he needed. He wasn't alone. Still, he knew the HOA was planning something. Clara had not responded to the public outcry, and her silence worried him more than her letters. Sam spent his mornings checking the cabin, walking along the fence, and making sure the gates were secure. The signs were still in place, strong and clear: private property. Not for sale. Keep out. No trespassing. Owner does not consent to sale. This property is legally protected. False claims will be challenged. By Thursday, Sam noticed a truck parked near the edge of the woods. 2 men in suits were talking to a photographer, taking pictures of the gate and the cabin. Sam's heart raced, but he stayed calm. He stepped outside and called down the gravel road. "Hello. Can I help you?" he shouted. The men turned, and one of them raised his hands. "Sir, we're just documenting properties for the HOA," he said quickly. Sam shook his head firmly. "This is private property. You are not allowed here. Leave immediately or I will report trespassing." The men hesitated. One of them glanced at the camera. "We were told it was permitted, but I never gave permission," Sam said sharply. "Leave now." The men muttered to each other and quickly left, driving down the road. Sam stood at the gate, hands on his hips, watching until they disappeared. The photographer had left the camera behind, and Sam picked it up, noting that even small actions from the HOA could not go unnoticed. That evening, Sam and Paul sat on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the trees. The woods glowed gold and orange, a reminder of why Sam had fought for this cabin in the first place. "They're trying everything," Paul said. They want you to feel pressured, to give up. But you've held firm for weeks now. You're stronger than they expected. Sam smiled faintly. I just want my home. I've done nothing wrong. All I've done is protect what's mine. Paul nodded. And you've inspired a lot of neighbors. Don't forget that. The next morning, Sam received another letter. This one was longer than the others and written in very formal language. It demanded that he remove all signs, unlock the gate, and attend a final arbitration meeting with legal representatives from the HOA. It sounded threatening, but Sam read it calmly. He went to the courthouse again and spoke to Harris, the attorney. Harris examined the letter and frowned. They're trying to make this sound urgent, but legally, you're fine. You have the deed, the property is yours, and they cannot force you to sell. Still, you should attend the meeting with representation. It may be an attempt to intimidate you. Sam agreed. He wanted to be ready for anything. He spent the next few days preparing his documents and organizing notes about every interaction he had with the HOA. He also called Paul and asked him to attend for support. When the day of the arbitration meeting arrived, Sam drove to the community clubhouse with a calm determination. Paul was already there, waiting. The room was large, with the HOA board seated at one side and a lawyer standing near Clara. Sam placed his folder on the table and took a deep breath. Clara started the meeting in her usual sharp tone. Mr. Sam, this is your final opportunity to comply. Your actions have violated the rules repeatedly, and the HOA has no choice but to take further action if you refuse. Sam spoke clearly. I have complied with all laws and obligations. I have paid my dues and maintained my property. The only thing I have done is protect my home from being sold without my permission. That is not a violation. The lawyer stepped forward. Mr. Sam, legally, you are correct. The property belongs to you. However, the HOA wants to ensure the peace and uniformity of the neighborhood. Your signs and the locked gate have caused tension. Sam remained steady. The tension comes from the HOA trying to act as if my property belongs to them. My signs are only the truth. I have done nothing to harm anyone. Neighbors who attended the meeting whispered quietly among themselves. A few even spoke up, explaining that they understood Sam's actions and believed he had the right to protect his home. The lawyer nodded slowly. It seems clear that Mr. Sam's rights are being respected by law. I suggest the HOA reconsider its approach before this escalates further. Clara's face was tight, but she did not argue. She glanced around the room, seeing the support Sam had from neighbors and realizing that continuing to push him could lead to public embarrassment. By the time the meeting ended, Sam felt a sense of quiet victory. He had not only defended his home but also shown the community that the HOA could not bully one determined person into submission. Walking back to his cabin with Paul, Sam looked at the gate, the signs, and the surrounding woods. This cabin is mine, he said softly. No one can take it from me. Paul smiled. And now everyone knows it. You've done more than protect a home. You've shown courage. The sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Sam sat on his porch, sipping tea, feeling the calm of the woods around him. The fight was not over, but he had proven one thing: he would never give up on what was rightfully his. The weeks after the arbitration meeting passed quietly. Sam kept his cabin well maintained, the gate locked, and the signs standing proudly. The neighbors continued to show quiet support, sometimes dropping by with small gestures of encouragement or simply waving as they walked by. Sam felt a sense of peace he had not felt in a long time. Clara and the board seemed to have pulled back for now. They sent a few letters, but none of them carried threats of legal action. It was as if they had realized that forcing Sam to comply was no longer possible without causing more trouble than it was worth. The lawyer had reminded them of Sam's legal rights, and the HOA had begun to face quiet scrutiny from the community. One morning, Sam sat on his porch drinking coffee when he saw Paul walking up the gravel path. Paul had a bright smile on his face. "Morning, Sam," Paul said. "I came by to tell you something. The neighbors have started talking. They want to form a small committee to communicate directly with the HOA. They feel your stand inspired them to speak up too." Sam felt a warm glow. "That's good to hear. I've been hoping more people would start standing up for themselves, not just me." Paul nodded. "It seems your courage has made a difference. Even Clara and her board have noticed. Things are calmer now, and the meetings are quieter." Sam looked around at his cabin, the woods beyond, and the signs that had been his shield. "I never wanted conflict," he said softly. "I just wanted my home." "But sometimes," Paul replied, "protecting what is yours means facing conflict. You did that well." A few days later, Sam received a visit from Anna, the reporter. She carried a camera but smiled warmly. "Sam, I want to take a few pictures for a follow-up article. People are talking about how you stood up for your cabin. It's inspiring." Sam chuckled softly. "I don't usually like attention, but if it helps others, I don't mind." Anna snapped a few pictures and took notes as Sam explained how he had handled the situation. He spoke of the importance of standing firm while remaining calm, of keeping proof of every interaction, and of relying on support from friends and neighbors. When she left, Sam felt satisfied. He had not only protected his home but also shared lessons that could help others in similar situations. A week later, a quiet letter arrived from the HOA. It was simple and brief. "Dear Mr. Sam, we acknowledge your compliance with legal obligations and respect your rights as the property owner. We regret any confusion or discomfort caused by previous actions. Sincerely, the HOA board." Sam read it carefully, then placed it in his folder. A small smile appeared on his face. Finally, there was recognition of his ownership and his rights. The letters, the warnings, and the intimidation had come to an end. That evening, he walked to the edge of his property, looking out over the forest beyond. The sun dipped low in the sky, painting the trees in warm golden light. The woods were calm, the air cool, and the sounds of nature peaceful. He breathed deeply, feeling the serenity that had drawn him to the cabin years ago. Paul came along and stood beside him. "Looks like the fight is over, Sam." Sam nodded. "For now. But I learned something important. If you stand for what's right, others will notice. You can make a difference, even against powerful forces." Paul smiled. "And you've shown everyone in the neighborhood that courage matters. They will remember this for a long time." Sam turned back to his cabin. The signs were still there, strong and visible. They had served their purpose, not as weapons, but as reminders of truth. His cabin was his home, and that was finally respected. He went inside and sat at his wooden table, looking out the window at the quiet woods. There was work to do around the property, small projects he had left unfinished, and perhaps more moments of peace to enjoy. But most importantly, he felt safe. The struggle had taught him patience, determination, and the value of community support. As the night fell, stars appeared in the clear sky above. Sam stepped onto his porch one last time before bed and looked up, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. He had defended his home, stood by his principles, and gained respect from his neighbors. He knew the HOA might always exist, with its rules and its plans, but he also knew something stronger: the power of standing firm, the courage to speak truth, and the strength of community. Sam closed the gate, taking one last look at the signs that had started it all. Then he walked inside, feeling at peace. For the first time in weeks, the cabin felt like the true home he had always imagined. The battle was over, and the cabin, the woods, and the quiet life he cherished were his once again. Outside, the forest settled into silence, and the stars above shone like tiny guardians over a home that had been defended with courage and care. Sam sat back, relaxed, and smiled. He knew he had won more than just a fight over property. He had won respect, peace, and a story of perseverance that would inspire anyone who heard it. The cabin was safe. The gate was locked. The sign stood strong. And Sam, at last, could enjoy the life he had fought to protect.